What is up, movie viewers? Dena Views and Reviews here, asking what you watching. Today I am watching Hillbilly Elegy. Now this movie stars Dylan Gage, Glenn Close, Amy Adams, Gabrielle Basso, Haley Bennett, Bo Hopkins, and Frida Pinto. It is written by Vanessa Taylor. It is directed by Ron Howard. It's produced by Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, Kevin Halloran, Julie O, Karen London, William M. Connor, and J.D. Vance. As we know, former President Donald Trump has chosen J.D. Vance to be his vice president. As a result, the movie Hillbilly Elegy, which was released in 2020, became all of the buzz because it is said to be based on J.D. Vance's life. In 2016, his best-selling memoir of his experiences growing up as a member of the white working class. But aren't most people working class, the majority of Americans? They would have been most likely referred to as rednecks, hicks, country hicks, or even poor white trash. Now, the majority of America is working class, so that doesn't distinguish poor people much. But this movie opens and you find the young J.D. Vance. He is enjoying a summer visit with his family in a small mountain town in northern Kentucky. It almost looks like some type of annual family reunion. He runs to take one last swim in the creek before returning to Middleton, Ohio with his sister, his mother, his Mama, and his grandfather, his papa, who all live on the same street but in separate houses in a white American suburb. In an attempt to tell this story of his and his sister's upbringing, the movie constantly jumps between 1997 and 2011. You are observing JD as a college student at Yale, and all of a sudden he's reflecting on something where he is represented as the young teenager character. So it goes back and forth in time. So JD is constantly reflecting on his many experiences growing up with and being subjected to difficulties that come from being reared by a person that is addicted, a single mother, and her temperament and dysfunctional behavior that found herself in various relationships with an abundance of abusive men. Now, this movie never said or mentioned anything of his biological father, whose name is said to be on his birth certificate, but he is said to admit that he was a total stranger to him. James David Vance has had a number of names in his life as a result of his mother's various relationship choices, even referred to as what's called a revolving door of father figures. And that, of course, are men that were in and out of his life. Also said to be chronicled in his best-selling 2016 memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. Now, Vance was originally named James Donald Bowman at birth after his father, Donald Bowman, whom is said to be his mother's second husband. According to his writings, they split up when he was a toddler, and his father gave him up for adoption when he was 6. Now, after that divorce, his mother married Bob Hamill, who became JD's legal father, and as a result, his mother changed his name again to James Donald Bowman. He became James David Hamill, swapping out her ex-husband's first name for her uncle's name, David, to preserve the JD, which was his nickname. They eventually split up as well as his mother would take the name of whatever husband that she married. Eventually, JD just decided upon keeping the last name of his mother's parents, which is Vance. Now, young JD was a part of a clan of people where it was very common to experience drug abuse, poverty, and domestic violence. And just as it seemed he was beginning to follow in his mother's footsteps, his Mama got She wanted him to break the generational cycle of addiction, of abuse, and of violence. I gave this movie a 2.5 out of 5 stars, mainly because I felt it was an inspirational story that can be used to motivate others. However, the story's ending seemed a bit unresolved to me. The closure, I just wasn't pleased with it. There were writings on the screen as to what happened to the characters, but I felt it would have been better to show him in a setting that represented how he had reached success. He'd actually beaten the odds. Now, I am referring to the movie's specific ending scene. Perhaps it could have closed with a peek into his successful and accomplished life. That would have been a better ending for me. But one thing that perturbed me about this movie personally when it comes to the money sources is the fact that his mom was a licensed nurse. So she was making a pretty good salary, I would assume. Now, I don't know what mom, his Maymah and grandfather did for a living, but noticeably they lived in separate homes on the same street. And it just left me pondering the sources of their income to be able to afford 3 different houses. I think this also shows the cultural differences when it comes to what each of us see and how we view wealth, success, and most of all, the different cultures, different ways that cultures classify poverty. Now, I gotta say, Glenn Close did a wonderful acting job in this film. She looked just like J.D. Vance's actual grandmother. And at the end of the movie, they show his Maymah in actual videos and pictures, and the resemblance between the two is stunning. They gotta be some kinfolks, or they had a hell of a makeup artist on set. Now, here's a fun fact. While I was watching this movie, I did discover that although many of the events were said to have taken place in, is it Kentucky or other locations, but the movie was actually shot right here in my very own hometown. I recognized the buildings, the streets, and various landmarks like Popular Street, First Street, Cherry Street, Central City Park, and so many other familiar spots in downtown Macon, Georgia. Especially when he was driving under the bridge leaving Central City Park. That is the exact same bridge my mom would drive through and honk the car horn when we were children because it made such a loud echo sound. So whenever you drove under it, you always honked your horn. Now, movie studios love to use Macon, Georgia's downtown area to shoot scenes. And I think it is because it still contains some of the old Southern historic buildings, and that is appealing to many of the productions. It still maintains that segregated, soft exterior that it once had. It's only been a few years since they actually removed the white only and colored only words from the top of the Macon Terminal Station. So it is a favorite of many production companies today to come and shoot movie scenes here. I even hear that they will be shooting some scenes from the new Superman movie. Now, Hillbilly Elegy is rated R, and if you are interested in checking out this movie, you most certainly can, because it is currently streaming on Netflix. If you have not already, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments on what you thought of this movie. I invite you to join me weekly for another review or a movie recommendation. And I want you to remember, it's my view. Now, what are you watching?